as always, would like to encourage every correction officer or loved ones of correction officers to purchase them this book, Correction Officer's Guide to Understanding Inmates, the 44 Keys to Power, Control, and Respect. Also, I would like to encourage everyone to purchase the keychains. Thank you for your support. Okay, now, as we know, 2 weeks ago, Norman Seabrook was convicted of 2 counts, of one count of fraud and 1 count of conspiracy. And I would like to know, William, what is your reaction to what has transpired?
I kind of have mixed feelings about it. Look, when Norman first started, I was his biggest fan. Justice has been served. The jury has decided. 40 years is a long time. I know he has a family. I know that other people are going to suffer with him. So I feel bad about that. Norman Seabrook had a fiduciary duty to his membership, and he ignored that and committed crimes so that he can make out on the deal himself. I think that the jury made the right decision, but I do feel bad. He is a correction officer. At the end of the day, just like these people that we look over in jail, when you commit the crime, you have to do the time.
If you could talk to Norman right now, what would you say to him?
I told you. I told you.
You confronting him about the $5 million transaction, that is what led to your removal from the executive board?
Yeah, ultimately thereafter, I think Norman realized that I was onto something, and that I wasn't going to let it go. I was pretty persistent within the board. A lot of board members, they utilized me to their advantage. I would walk into a facility and you would have the chief of staff for the chief of the department or the commissioner coming over. Hey, what do you need? Is everything okay? I was pretty successful when I addressed something. I went about it in such a way, and I had great success. So I know that he knew once I started asking questions and requesting these financial documents, it wasn't going to end there. It was going to continue. And I pretty much believe that he made it his business to remove me. Subsequently, for requesting the member list, which by virtue of the Constitution and bylaws and the position that I held, I was responsible for maintaining and upkeeping an accurate member list of the correction officers. And he never let me do that. And when I questioned it and I asked to do that, he told me no. It's crazy.
Now, let me ask you this. If Norman wants to remove someone, or if Norman had wanted to remove you from the board, wouldn't he have needed the approval of the entire board or a majority of the board members to actually get you out? He couldn't just say you're out and that's it. He would have to bring it to a vote, right?
Ultimately, that's what he did. But again, look, this book is like your rules and regulations for the department. This is the operating manual for COBA. This tells you how you're supposed to operate, who's responsible for what, how to remove someone, what the delegate body is supposed to do. Everything is in this book. And they used to violate this book left and right.
So my question is, did the other members vote you out along with Norman?
Later on, there was a vote once I demanded that this move forward. But again, according to this Constitution and bylaws, according to the not-for-profit corporation law, which also governs the COBA, an elected member of the executive board can only be removed by the membership. So the members that vote you in, because why vote them in if you could just arbitrarily take them out? The members that vote you in are supposed to be the people that remove you. And that didn't happen. At the end of the day, at the table, Norman Seabrook said, get out, don't come back, take your stuff. Told security I couldn't come back in the building, canceled my phone, removed, everything that had to do with me. I was like banished. None of the board members after that day accepted a phone call from me. The law firm that represented me didn't answer the phone for me or call me back. And at that point, I felt that something terrible had happened, and that's when I sought counsel on my own and put the lawsuit against Koba. And in that lawsuit, I included the fact that Norman Seabrook made a $5 million transaction without approval of the executive board in violation of the Constitution and bylaws, among other things.
Okay, now, those of you who've been following the On the Stoop broadcast, you know that this affidavit that Norman filed was very important in this case. Now, the reason why Norman had to file that affidavit is because of the lawsuit that you filed when they removed you from the union, right?
Yes.
And so you were bringing up the fact that he did not follow the bylaws by removing you or by transferring the $5 million, that was a violation of the bylaws. And so when you accused him of that in your lawsuit, he had to respond to that in an affidavit.
Yes.
Right. Now, tell me about that.
Okay. Basically, in my lawsuit, I indicated the different procedural violations that took place with my removal. And I explained how they routinely violated the bylaws. One of the largest violations was that $5 million transaction. So my attorney got in touch with the Koba attorneys, and we filed the case in court, and they had to respond. And not just Norman had to respond. Norman, every fiduciary on the board of trustees for the funds had to respond, which was Norman, Elias, Mike Maiello, Amelia Warner. They filed those affidavits with regards to my allegations. Now, when Norman Seabrook filed his affidavit, he made reference to a different $5 million transaction than the one that I originally brought up. So I said, Norman Seabrook made a $5 million transaction. He violated the bylaws. He violated procedures. He didn't bring it before the executive board. He arbitrarily made the move, and it was the members' funds that he was moving back and forth, and that required a vote he didn't take. When he answered, he addressed another $5 million transaction. At that point, my attorney's like, this is not what we were referring to. He referred to something else.
Okay. As we know, there was $10 million transferred in January of 2014. Then there was a $5 million transfer from the general fund, rainy day fund. That's what you're referring to.
Yes.
But we also know through court that there was another $5 million investment in Platinum Partners that took place in July of 2014.
Yes.
And so you're saying pretty much that Norman was referring to that transaction
And not the other.
and not the one that you were talking about of the $5 million that happened in June from the
That's
rainy
correct.
day fund. Okay.
That raised red flags with my attorneys. And
So let me, before you go any further, did you know about that last $5 million transfer?
I knew of one $5 million transaction that was made that he did not follow procedure doing. I got suspicious because the people that he invested with sent them to Israel not once but twice. He sent all the executive board members and delegates to this Museum of Tolerance in Manhattan that was owned by the same company and the same group of people that sent him away. And that same group had a security company that came to Rikers and tried to circumvent the vetting procedure to sell the Department of Corrections security equipment. So I connected all the dots, and I was like, this guy is this guy's he's doing this is what he's doing is wrong. He's doing something shady, something wrong. So he brought about the other $5 million transaction. My attorney says this is not the one we're talking about. He did it again, and then they got in an uproar. One of my attorneys was familiar with Pripahara and his legal team, who is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, and that after that point, Pripahara says, "Tell me what's going on with the money." And I don't know if you've ever been spoken to by a federal agent or a U.S. attorney, but the first thing they do is sit you down and tell you that we're going to have a discussion. If you are not truthful in the discussion, that's automatically 1 year in prison. So we encourage you to be as truthful as you can. And I was truthful. And ultimately, the one $5 million transaction that I was aware of that he did improperly led to another $5 million transaction and another $10 million transaction, fully totaling $20 million. I had no idea that the rabbit hole was going to go that deep. But, so again, you asked me, well, what do I feel about Norman and what do I feel about the decision? The time that he's facing and the guilty verdict was all of his own doing. All of his own doing. So, though I do feel bad, it was all his own doing that led him there. That Israel trip is what angered and offended a lot of the board members. Those trips we used to talk about them, and he even went to a Christmas party that Koba threw. He was bragging on how he's been to Israel not once but twice. God has given him this blessing to go to Israel twice. Who here has been to Israel? Who? I have twice, and he was a little tipsy, but he referred to that Israel trip quite fondly. The president is arrested and convicted. These individuals in the court perjure themselves and seem so incompetent when they speak. A treasurer shouldn't talk that way. A president shouldn't speak that way. A financial secretary, I don't know. I didn't read it. I didn't know what I was signing. And they're still allowed to be in control and charge of this union and still in control of the same money that they lost. The only thing you can do to make a difference in this union is remove the people that are there now and start again. In order to do that, the election is coming up in 2020. The only way that you can possibly make something happen, step one is changing this book.